Hi, everybody. First, I want to thank Stacy, oh, there she is, and the Cholangiocarcinoma Foundation for the opportunity to present here. You got a little peek at the master protocol that I'm going to share with you today, but I wanted to just start to get you excited about how you can contribute to these kinds of efforts to support advancements in the space. I've been in the master protocol space for about a decade, but we continue to see advancements in the field. And over the last 10 years or so, we've seen movement from screening trials to drug registration trials and using these models to support those activities. And we want to apply that here. We want to take those learnings and help the patients with biliary tract cancers. So I thought before I started it'd be helpful to understand who we are. So GCAR, Global Coalition for Adaptive Research, is a nonprofit organization that leads the development and implementation of master protocols. And you heard a little bit about it this morning from the FDA as a type of innovation to support some of the challenges in clinical trials. So we serve as a trial sponsor, we serve as an IND holder, and we really try to facilitate these efforts on the behalf of the community. And by that community, I'm talking about the group on the left, the scientific leadership, pharma and biotech and industry, as well, and most importantly, the patients and the patient organizations. And then working close in collaboration with the regulators to ensure that these meet the needs to support the development and advancement of new drugs to bring to patients. And again, we are here to facilitate and convene these efforts. We don't consider ourselves experts on the disease. We consider ourselves experts on helping you to implement these efforts to support the patients. So today what I wanted to do is spend some time going back over, I know we heard some of that this morning with the speaker from the FDA, on the current challenges with clinical research, then dig a little bit more in detail around the utility and value of master protocols and really understanding how these benefit the patient, the clinician, and even the pharma, the biotech community, and then show you a little bit more about the master protocol, the BTC master protocol. What you saw there is already adapted a bit, and it's evolved a little bit in how we've been thinking about it over the last couple of days. We've had the great opportunity to meet at a lunchtime forum today with many clinical investigators and already start to think about how to further improve it. And then discuss next steps and how the community can get involved and how we need your involvement as clinicians, as patients, as advocates to help us move this effort forward. So we all know that drug development is a long and costly process. I'm sure you've heard this before, that there are thousands of drugs in development. It can cost billions of dollars and take many, many years. And very few oncology drugs actually ultimately get approved. And while we consider randomized controlled trials as the gold standard, they can be slow, they can be inefficient, limited in the questions that they address. In a lot of cases, that can impede the development and timely delivery of new devices or agents for patients. And then when we start to think about our understanding of the biology of cancer and the fact that we need to be doing trials to look at more focused groups, we really understand that we need better trials. And so what master protocols are they are an opportunity to build an infrastructure once and use it many times. So the example we often use is if you were to, let's use the Utah Jazz. If you were to play a basketball game, you wouldn't build a stadium every time you played that game, tear it down and build another one for your next game. You would build it once, as they do, and use it many times. And that's really what a master protocol does. So it is a collection of trials that are, or sub-studies that are an infrastructure that's built once, and it shares a lot of the same, it shares design and operational components that are better coordinated than if you were to do them all separately. And you may have heard some of the terms. Master protocols are applied to platform trials, umbrella trials, and basket trials. So in terms of the different types of master protocols, there are umbrella trials where we think about multiple different targeted therapies in the context of a single disease. basket trials, where we're now talking about a single targeted therapy in the context of multiple diseases or disease subtypes, and then platform trials, where we think about an infrastructure that's built and where we're studying the disease and many therapies in the context of this infrastructure, where you can have therapies enter and exit at different times based on a decision algorithm. And that decision algorithm can include a Bayesian adaptive design, where you're understanding and updating the probabilities of assignment to a drug based on how other patients have performed. So what's the benefit? Why would this be a value to patients and to the patient advocacy community? Well, they're often built to allow you to have access to multiple investigational options, rather than a traditional trial, which may be a one-to-one randomization to standard of care, which may or may not be performing particularly well for particular diseases. It gives you increased opportunity to have access to investigational drugs. They're really designed by the patient and the advocacy community. We've been working closely with the Cholangiocarcinoma Foundation, and so it's disease-centric. It's not drug-centric, it's not company-centric, and so it's really informed by the patients, their caregivers. And so you'll see in these kinds of efforts opportunities to have crossover from one treatment to the other, to be re-randomized if the drug isn't particularly performing well. And so that is often really encouraged by and pushed forward by the patient community to allow that happen. It also, in a lot of cases, provides more accelerated outcomes. And so we can learn quickly in some of these designs. Failing fast is important. Knowing that a drug is not performing well and moving on and testing other drugs and doing that quickly is just as important as moving drugs faster to the market. And we've heard here through the mentorship program, through other opportunities, an interest in giving back to the community. And again, it provides a pathway, if you are a patient on these efforts, to continue to support and improve the standard of care for other and future patients. We also want to make sure it's beneficial to the biotech and pharma community. We want to make sure the exciting drugs make their way, and the ones that you all want to see make their way into these trials. So again, we build these infrastructures, and for the companies, the work is done for them. It's really designed to be a plug-and-play model. And that makes it sometimes easier, faster, and cheaper than if they were to go it alone. We have a global effort to support patients with glioblastoma, and we see that the cost of a drug to be studied in that trial is about a third to a quarter if a company would do it themselves, and we are enrolling at 4 times as fast as traditional trials. So we create an infrastructure to shorten timelines. We can use it for lots of different development opportunities, screening, approvals, and we hope what that does is it encourages more interest in the space. And we have seen that in other disease areas where we've seen more interest of companies to test their drugs in these rare diseases. It also is an opportunity to be innovative. We know, and we heard this morning from the FDA, that there is regulatory interest in these approaches, that they do see it as a way to overcome some of the challenges with some of the traditional randomized controlled trials. And it allows us to really target specific aberrations, and also, if there is benefit, to move these forward and get approvals. And finally, I think there's a great value to our clinicians and researchers. It creates a clinical portfolio in one platform. So for the clinician, there's less bias. You're not pushing patients to trials where you think a drug may work or don't really know. It really, the trial is helping you to decide and give patients lots of options. It allows you to rapidly evaluate potential new therapies, to get that opportunity to get that commercial level rigor to support new approvals, so you can see these drugs move in faster. And it also gives our clinical community leadership opportunities. Again, I said we are not the clinical experts when we run these efforts. We really lean in on the clinical community to support these and to decide what are the questions that want to be asked. And so they serve as leaders in the effort. We bring in junior faculty to be co-leads. There's authorship and academic credit opportunities, and an opportunity to interact more broadly among the international community. And finally, it gives you an opportunity for a continuous learning model. We've talked in, and we'll show you, I'm getting to the trial, which I know you're eager to see, but we've talked a lot about opportunities to continue to collect data to do continuous learning and for the community and to share that data with the community. So we know that the challenge here is there, as we see in other rare diseases, there's biological factors, there's trial factors, and we really do think that this really gives us the opportunity to study multiple experimental therapies simultaneously, to increase the opportunity for access to new treatments, to create an infrastructure to limit downtime, to enable institutional knowledge and learning so we don't recreate the real. We don't build that stadium for the Jazz every single time. And so create a turnkey solution for companies, for patients, for clinicians. And that's what we're hoping to do and apply all that learning here in this space. And so the plan for the master protocol is to provide more opportunities for patients to be who participate to be assigned targeted therapies, and to allow for multiple rare aberrations to be studied simultaneously, and allowing new investigational therapies to be added at any time. So arms can enter and exit at different times, led by the key opinion leaders in the field, and you'll see the leadership that's already come together to work on this, and working closely with Stacy and the Cholangiocarcinoma Foundation. We really came together a couple of years ago to try and solve the issue of enrollment, patient enrollment on a trial, and really came to the realization that this is really what the community wants to see to try and move forward and advance treatments in the space. So we already have added to this list. So we've adapted a bit, we've grown. We had the opportunity at a lunch forum today to sit down with many of you and talk about what else you would like to see in the trial. We're going to continue to have those discussions over the coming weeks, so we encourage you to reach out to us if you want to participate in those. But again, wanted to acknowledge the leadership, the clinical leadership who are really driving this effort within your community. So Mitesh showed you a slightly different version of this. We spent some time last night and today moving and advancing this and refining it, and we'll continue to do that over the coming weeks and months. But again, it is an opportunity at first to look at progressive or recurrent disease and then move and expand into the newly diagnosed patient population. We want to use local NGS testing to place patients into either of these different options. And so those options may include focusing on a particular target. They may be aberration agnostic. There may be opportunities to look at and get some early signal seeking single agent, and then move those into, if those that have a positive signal, to look at those treatments against some patients being randomized to control, but with the opportunity for a crossover. So there's a lot of different ways we can utilize this infrastructure to ask a lot of questions that will support validation and an approval. So the initial part, you'll see the top part of the screen is really the initial build. So it'll provide, we hope, multiple options for targeted evaluations for both aberration agnostic and as well as ones that are more targeted in rare targets. In some cases, it will include a comparator arm, and if appropriate. And then over time, we'd like to continue to build and grow this infrastructure. So while this isn't part of the initial plan, we would like to look at potentially an exploratory, an infrastructure to identify even new targets, combinations, and bring them into the effort. So where are we in the process? So we are in the design phase. So we've been convening the design team. We're conducting these series of meetings where we continue to refine it. We would like over the next few weeks, months, to have some informal feedback from the regulators and continue to move that forward. And then our hope is if we feel like we've locked in on a design that is something that the that the community is comfortable with, then that's when the ramp up will really occur, where we'll start to work more collectively to get more formal feedback from the regulators, start to bring in our sites, and then our implementation effort. Sometimes these efforts can take just a couple of months and we can ramp up quite quickly, but I anticipate this is probably about a year from now where we'll start to see some real active work in terms of implementation and opening. So as I mentioned at the beginning, we are here to convene these efforts on behalf of the community, so your involvement is essential. We consider this an investigator, patient-centric effort, and so that success is dependent on the clinical, the academic, and the patient advocacy community to support this. So there's lots of ways to get involved, to join committees, to participate and bring forward new treatment options. And so if you're interested in being part of it, hopefully you stop by our table at the exhibit hall or you reach out to us over the coming weeks. But we'd love to talk to you about how you can work with us to make this the trial to support your community. Thank you.